Thanks for tuning into this earnings conversation with Mr. Satish Pai of Hindalco. The markets rewarded the performance. Some bit of it was anticipated as well. And I think the commentary from the management will be crucial to understand how does Mr. Pai think the rest of the financial year could be like, if it's possible to predict such a volatile environment. Mr. Pai, thanks so much for joining in. And at the outset, what a difference a quarter can make, because August 10th, I was looking at the Bloomberg headline. It said that Hindalco has posted record profit. This time around, there's a miss on profit. The environment, if anything, is even more volatile. How do you read this, and how tough is it, the business environment out there?
So, to be fair, even in our last earnings call, we had already warned because we could see the headwinds coming. So, just as a small correction, we outperformed the analyst expectations. So, in our business, it's a relative game. So, as long as you can do better than your competition, you're doing well. So, it's fairly difficult, but I think that we are all in a very uncertain environment. And I think for the Indian business, the availability and pricing of coal has been the single biggest thing that has caused a big drop in the upstream profits. So I think that's sort of because Novelis had a very good quarter, the copper business did very well, the downstream aluminium business doubled its EBITDA. But I think the upstream aluminium business, because the cost of production dramatically went up, it had a big impact on the margins of the upstream business.
From the looks of things, some bit of cool off would have happened in key commodity prices as well. Does it start getting reflected to your mind in the books of metal companies by and large in Q3 itself, or would there be some case of earlier high cost inventory of certain raw materials or certain input costs which might impact Q3?
So a very good point. Actually, both for Novelis and Hindalco, we have just been telling all the analysts that certain amount of higher cost inventory that got produced during Q2 will be run out during Q3. So you're going to see some, because you produce it and then it takes you a couple of months to sell it. So you're absolutely right. Q3 will see some impact of that higher cost inventory. But at the same time, the input costs, especially on the upstream business like coal prices, have started to moderate. So that will have a positive impact on the cost of production.
Okay. Actually, maybe just take a step. Allow me to take a step back and just ask you: is this a bit of a recessionary gloom, Mr. Pai, or a breakdown of what people had believed would be a commodity super cycle of sorts? How would you classify what's happening in the last 9 to 12 odd months? Be it because of the conflict situation and so on and so forth, but how do you classify what's happening in the last 12 months?
So I think one thing we have to be clear: the slightly longer term outlook on non-ferrous metals like aluminium, copper, zinc, the outlook is very strong. So what has happened is that the Russia-Ukraine war came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting it, and has created a whole set of macroeconomic uncertainties that has created a lot of this, high energy prices, cost inflation coming in. So I think that, now we are all waiting for some of those things to resolve and calm down. Because I think that the sort of uncertainty level in world economics is too high now. So everybody can predict everything can get solved, and somebody can predict things will go on for a long time. It's a fairly difficult situation for businesses.
Yeah, but does the near term look especially challenging? I mean, I was looking at your earnings transcript as well, and even there when analysts have asked about what Novelis has said in the call, and to that your response too, does the near term seem especially challenging?
Absolutely. I think that the next couple of quarters for most businesses, and especially in the commodity side businesses, are going to be quite difficult to navigate. Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Pai, the other question is, of course, there is a fundraise. I presume at some point of time internally there could be some bit of capex push out that you might have thought of as well, if not by a major period, then by a small space. What happens in this interim, and what would excuse me for asking this on the call, but I should have read up on it, but what's the intent of this fundraise, the 124 million?
So look, there is no fundraise. We had borrowed from banks about 2,500 crores in March of last year.
Okay.
So as per the Government of India regulations, 25% of what you borrow, you need to do a bond. So we have just taken the board approval to do a bond of 1,000 crores. So we are not increasing our borrowing, and there is no plans for a fundraise.
Okay.
Okay. But I think your larger question on how we see capex and how do we, so we are not going to change any of our capex plans that we have ongoing right now. So
Okay.
all the projects that are ongoing are going ahead full steam. I think that what we will do is any new project that we plan to start, we will make sure that the cash flows are adequate to service that capex as well, because we don't want to borrow to do capex. But we have a large amount of projects that are already ongoing. 2.5 billion project in the US in Bay Minette, and we have 2 big projects in India in FRP and extrusion. Those are going ahead, and our cash position is very strong that allows us to stick with our capex plans.
Got it. And is client conversation in any fashion indicative of there being some normalcy in an otherwise very abnormal period, or are client conversations also sounding very choppy? I mean, technology companies say a completely different picture to what some of the ferrous companies at least have told me, Mr. Pai. What is your sense?
No, I think the customers are absolutely certain that the longer term demand for aluminium is extremely strong. They want us to put in new capacity because they can see the market becoming more and more tight. And what they see happening in the next 2 quarters, whether it's a bit of destocking, whether it's a bit of, they are quite certain that this downturn can last 1 year, 1.5 years, but it's not going to continue forever. And they are more worried that the aluminium market is so tight right now, supply and demand is so tight, that they expect market leaders like Hindalco and Novelis to make that investment during this time, because that capacity will come up 3 years from now.
Right.
So 3 years from now, the demand for aluminium is going to be extremely strong, because it's a green metal. You need it for electrification, you need it for building and construction, packaging. So whichever way you look at it, the demand will be very strong and will continue to do so.
What's your own assessment, Mr. Pai? This downturn, year and a half, shorter, longer, possible to predict?
I think that, the way, in some ways, our job is not to speculate. I think that, as a business, all we can do is to make sure you run a tight ship, make sure you keep your costs under control, your operations are running fine. So I think that, we focus on the levers that we can control. And in many ways, you prepare for the worst. So if things happen to be better than what you have planned, then it'll be great. But we prepare for the worst.
Point taken. Let me try and ask you, while you control the levers that you can control, you probably look at the boundaries as well. And that's my next question. Outlook on, if it's possible to, an outlook on prices for the short term, very short term, as the case may be. And what's the, you kind of gave me some sense of the cost of production coming off a little bit, but inventory still continue to hit Q3. I'm just trying to get a gauge of how would the operational metrics move like in the second half of the current financial.
I think that what would be clear is that the LME, to take the London Metal Exchange price for aluminium, it's extremely volatile. Yesterday, the US inflation came in lower than expected.
Yes.
The price of the metal jumped $150 in one day. So on Monday, if some other thing comes out that China has shut down one more city, the aluminium prices can go down by 150. So I think we are in that fairly volatile type of environment, but the baseline seems to be around 2200, 2250 is where the aluminium prices are holding. So we are mentally preparing to be surviving at that level.
Okay, but if anything, I mean, the latest rumblings from China, at least today, seem to indicate that they are taking a small pivot, though it's unpredictable, but I'm still asking you.
Yeah, that's why I said that, we prepare for the worst. So any good news is going to be a bonus for us. We cannot sit and expect or make plans thinking that everything is going to go fine.
Yeah. Sure, that's understandable. Um, uh, one final question. I mean, demand would at best over the long term be predictable, maybe, but over the short term be completely unpredictable. You've given me a sense of the supply as well. What are the factor or that one key factor or two key factors that you would be watching out for very closely over the course of the next 6 months, Mr. Pai? Would it be a China opening up, or would it be a call that the US, or the impact that the US hiking has had on the US consumer in some fashion? Because Europe seems to be, for lack of a better word, a dead duck right now. What are the other elements that you are watching out for the most?
See, there are two big things that impact our business. The China economy, if it does well, the price of the metal will go up, and that's good for the upstream business in India. The US economy is where the biggest impact on Novelis business comes. But the part that is interesting is that 60% of Novelis business is can sheet. And canned beverages tend to do well in a recession. Because people, when they go home, because they will not go out as much, they consume more in can rather than when they go to a bar, when they do it more in bottles. So through every downturn, the can business has been very resilient. But what we are watching is the auto and the building and construction sectors. So the auto is still holding strong. The backlog is still good. But the auto sales of electric vehicles, high-end vehicles is one thing we watch. And as the interest rate goes up, the single housing starts are starting to slow in the US, to the building and construction. So these two in the US is something that we are watching very closely.
Just one final question. Sorry, I know I told you that I'll ask you one question, but I'm asking you one more. We were talking to one of the principal auto and suppliers to the premium car industry, and their experience is that while small end cars are not quite maybe taking up as much, but the premium car manufacturers are not scaling down. If anything, their plants are continuing as usual. In some sense, does that augur well for a Hindalco, or you would be agnostic of what category of cars are getting manufactured per se, because you would be supplying across?
No. For us, the higher end premium cars are the only places we supply large amounts of aluminum. So the SUV sector is the most important for us because you use aluminum to lightweight the car. So in smaller cars, you don't need to lightweight much. So aluminum usage is very low. So if the high-end premium cars and the electric vehicles, because electric vehicles, you are using more aluminum because you want to lightweight. So these are the two sectors which, as you said, today there has been no slowdown, but it's something that we are watching closely.
Got it. Mr. Pai, this was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much. And we wish you, in such uncertain times, we wish you all the best for the quarters ahead. Thank you so much for sharing some insights with us.
Thank you.
Bye. And viewers, thanks for tuning in.